Before we go into the actual hypothesis testing, first we'll get familiar to few terms which we use in the hypothesis test. First, very important terms are population and sample. So, what is a population? In statistics, population is the entire set of items from which you draw data for statistical study. It can be a group of individuals, a set of items, a set of um, anything. It makes up data pool for a study. So basically, a population is an entire set of data on which we perform test, any sort of test, be it t-test or z-test. Then comes sample. A sample is something which we derive from the population. A sample represents the group of interest from the population which we will use to represent the data. When we have large number of population, it is very hard for us to perform test on them, like the entire data set. So we use sample. We drive sample from the population and we perform tests on them or surveys on them, and accordingly we uh, we find out our results. Suppose suppose there is a suppose our population is number of students in an entire school, and I want to start remedial classes for students whose marks are below average. So what I'm going to do is, firstly, I'm going to go through each class and find out the students who have less marks than the average. So I'm going to take out few samples from those each class, and I'm going to start my remedial classes with those students. It's fine. Now we come to types of sampling. First type of sampling is purpose sampling. Then we have random, stratified, and systematic sampling. Purposive sampling is one in which the sampling units are selected with definite purpose in view. For example, if we want to give the picture that the standard of living has increased in the city of New Delhi, we may take individuals in the sample from rich and posh localities and ignore the localities where low income group and the middle class people live. This sample suffers from drawbacks of favoritism and nepotism, and does give a representative sample of the population. Purposive sampling basically comes with a condition. Based on this condition, we select our sample from a population. Next is random sampling. In this case, the sample units are selected at a random. Random sample is one in which each unit of population has an equal chance of being included in it. Suppose we take a sample of size small letter n from a finite population of size capital letter N. Then there are capital letter N combination small letter n possible samples. A sampling technique in which each samples has an equal chance of being selected is known as random sampling. And the sample obtained by this technique is termed as random samples. Next, we come to stratified sampling. Stratified sampling, here the population is divided into number of homogeneous group. By homogeneous group I mean groups which have same sort of category, same sort of features. If I'm taking a class of a class of students who are all 20 years of age and are all taking physics, so they're all the features of them is same, like all of them are studying physics and all of them are of age 20. So then we divide the population into strata, which differs from one another, but each of this group is homogeneous within itself. The strata should define a partition of population, that is, it should be collectively exhaustive and a mutually exclusive. Suppose in the previous example, like there's a class of students who are 20 years old and are taking physics. So if I'm putting student 1 in strata 1, that student 1 will only belong to strata 1. It cannot belong to strata 2 or strata 3. Then we have systematic sampling. Systematic sampling is a type of probability sampling method in which sample members from a large population are selected according to a random starting point but with a fixed periodic interval. This interval is called the sampling interval and is calculated by dividing the population size by the desired sample size. Then, despite the sample population being selected in advance, systematic sample is still thought of being as random if the periodic interval is determined beforehand and the starting point is random. So, suppose in this example, I am taking a sample 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10 from the population 1 to 10. The interval here is constant. That is from 2 to 4, the interval is 2, 4 to 6, the interval is 2 again. So the interval is constant. That is a fixed interval. That is, I'm taking sample of fixed interval. So in this case, every second person is systematically selected. Next, we come across as parameter and statistics. In order to avoid verbal confusion with the statistical constants of the population, which is mean and variance, since we can have mean of population as well as mean in sample. Same with variance. So we usually refer things related, the measures related to population as parameters and measures related to sample as statistics. Here, mean for sample is x bar, whereas for population is mu. Standard deviation for population is sigma, and for sample is small letter s. For proportion is p cap, and for population it is capital P, and the size is small letter n and capital letter N. Now we come to standard error. The standard deviation of sampling of statistics is known as standard error. The standard The standard error is basically a statistical term that measures the accuracy with which a sample distribution represents a population by using standard deviation. The standard deviation of a sampling of a statistics is known as standard deviation. A simple definition of standard deviation. Then here I have provided some standard error formulas for standard error with respect to their corresponding measures. The most important standard error or usually required standard error here is for the sample mean x bar. Most of the cases we use this standard error. The rest are just mentioned here. We will do them later. Now we come across to hypothesis testing. Is it clear till here? Was I clear till here?
Yes, Ashwin.
Okay. Now we go to hypothesis testing. So basically, what is hypothesis? A hypothesis is an uneducated guess about something in the world around you. It should be testable either by experiment or observation. For example, a new medicine you might think will work. So I can test this medicine and find out whether this medicine will work or not. Will this medicine be effective or not? Any statement about the population parameter is called statistical hypothesis. Okay. Now we come to hypothesis testing. Hypothesis testing in statistics is a way for you to test the results of a survey or experiment to see if you have meaningful result. Like suppose in this, a new medicine you think might work. I perform test, right? I can perform few hypothesis testing and find out the result, meaningful result, whether it will work or it won't work. You're basically testing whether your results are valid by figuring out the odds that your results have happened by chance. And if your results may happen by chance, the experiment won't be repeatable, so has little use. So basically, we are testing if the new medicine is working by chance or is it really effective. If it is working by chance, I won't repeat this experiment. But if it is really effective, I will keep on using the new medicine. Now we come across null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. For applying a hypothesis test, we first need to set up a hypothesis on which our test will be based. Like in this example, a new medicine will work or not. My hypothesis is that either it will work or it won't. Such a hypothesis, a definite statement about the population parameter. So such a hypothesis, which is usually a hypothesis of no difference, is called null hypothesis and is usually denoted by H naught. Null hypothesis is the hypothesis test which is tested for possible rejection under the assumption that it is true. So at first, I will assume that my null hypothesis is always going to be true. Like here, application of biofertilizer X do not increase plant growth. So I need to assume that this hypothesis, which I have assumed, is true, that applying this fertilizer X will not increase plant growth. Any hypothesis which is complementary to the null hypothesis is called an alternative hypothesis. Opposite to null hypothesis, anything opposite to null hypothesis, like here I said that application of biofertilizer will not increase the plant growth. To opposite of this, that is application of biofertilizer will increase the plant growth, will be my alternative hypothesis. Another example of null and alternative hypothesis can be that my null hypothesis can be the world is flat. The world is flat. We all know that the world is not flat, but I'm just taking a null hypothesis that my world is flat. So my alternative hypothesis will be that the world is not flat. The world is round. Now, suppose, for example, if you want to test the null hypothesis that the population has a specified mean, let's say mu naught. So my null hypothesis will look like H naught mu equals to, that is population mean, equals to specified mean, that is mu naught. Then my alternative hypothesis could be either that population mean is not equal to the specified mean, or the population mean is greater than the specified mean, and the population mean is smaller than the specified mean. So my one null hypothesis can have three sort of alternative hypotheses depending on the problem we are facing. The null hypothesis is also known as the initial belief. Like I said in the example, the world is flat. Ages ago, our ancestors thought that the world is flat. So that is an initial belief. But as the world started developing and ages passed away, the alternative hypothesis came up, that is the world is round. The alternative hypothesis in one, that is here, it is a two-tailed hypothesis. It is two-tailed alternative because if I'm giving this alternate hypothesis as not equal to, I'm giving you two possibilities. Either my population mean is greater than the specified mean or smaller. It is not mentioned properly whether it is smaller or greater. I have just mentioned it is not equal to. So I am giving you two possibilities, hence two-tailed. Whereas I'm giving you one possibility here, that is my population mean is greater than the specified mean. So there is only one possible chance that my population mean will be greater than my specified mean. Reason why they are called one-tailed alternative. Null versus alternative hypothesis. Null hypothesis is a statement about the population parameter, whether the population parameter, be it mu or any population parameter that is mean, will be equal to certain amount or certain value, or will be greater or smaller. Whereas alternative hypothesis contradicts the null hypothesis. It's completely opposite. If I'm saying it is greater, then my null alternative hypothesis will be smaller. We test the likelihood of statement being true in order to decide whether to accept or reject our alternative hypothesis. We always test our null hypothesis. If it is true, we accept, or if it is false, we reject. We determine whether or not to accept or reject the statement based on the likelihood of null hypothesis being true. Likelihood of the null hypothesis being true. Right. So, whereas in alternative hypothesis, the likelihood of accepting the alternative hypothesis depends on the result of null hypothesis. If the null hypothesis is false, then there is a chance that we might accept our alternative hypothesis. But if our null hypothesis is true, there is no chance of accepting our alternative hypothesis. Can include equal to, smaller than, or equal to, greater than or equal to sign. If it is equal to, then our alternative hypothesis will be not equal to. If it is smaller and equal to, it will be greater than sign, and if it is greater than or equal to, it will be smaller than sign for alternative hypothesis. Now we come to level of significance. Probability of rejecting a hypothesis when it actually is true is called the level of significance. Suppose I have a null hypothesis and it is actually true, but I'm still not going to accept the null hypothesis. Then it will be a level of significance. Probability. Basically, level of significance is the size of type 1 error. Let me tell you the type 1 and type 2 errors first. While we perform any statistical test on data, there are chances of making error while deciding to accept or reject the lot after examining the sample. Like chances of rejecting our null hypothesis when it is actually true. As I was saying, there are two types of error, type 1 error and type 2 error. Type 1 error is rejecting the null hypothesis when it is true, and type 2 error is failing to reject the null hypothesis when it is false, or accepting H0 when our alternative hypothesis is correct. Now, when I write probability of rejecting H0 when it is true, that is type 1 error, probability of type 1 error, we write it as alpha. And when we write probability of accepting H1, that is alternative hypothesis, when it is false, we write it as beta. So alpha and beta are basically the sizes of type 1 and type 2 error respectively. And in practice, type 1 error amounts to rejecting a lot when it is good, and type 2 amounts to accepting the lot when it is bad. Okay. In simple words, type 1 amounts to rejecting a lot when it is good, and type 2 amounts to accepting the lot when it is bad. So our probability of rejecting a lot when it is good, probability of rejecting a lot when it is good is known as producer's risk, because I am the producer and I am rejecting the lot which is good. So it is my risk, it is on my risk that I'm rejecting this lot. Whereas when I'm accepting a lot when it is bad, I'm giving a lot to a consumer and the consumer is accepting it knowing that it is bad. So it is the consumer's risk. Here, this is a table where it is summarized.
Actually, your screen has gone. Can you share one?
Is it visible now?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a table summarizing the types of error when our null hypothesis is true and it is rejected. So type 1 error. Okay. When our null hypothesis is false and it is rejected, so correct decision. Because our null hypothesis is wrong, so there is no need for us to accept it. So it was a correct decision. When our null hypothesis is true and it is not rejected. Yes, when our null hypothesis is true and it is not rejected, again a correct decision. But when our null hypothesis is false and it is not rejected, So instead it is accepted. When our null hypothesis is false, but it still is accepted, we are performing type 2 error. Now we come back to level of significance. So as I said, probability of rejecting a hypothesis when it is actually true, it is called the level of significance. Basically, level of significance is the size of type 1 error. Okay. Even in type 1 error, we are rejecting the hypothesis when it is true. Same here in level of significance, we are rejecting a hypothesis when it is actually true. It is also denoted by alpha. So if our significance level, suppose alpha falls here, this area will be rejected, and this area failed to reject, as in will be accepted, not significant. The levels of significance are usually 5% and 1%. Basically, employed in test of hypothesis, mostly it is 5% and 1%, and it is always fixed in advance before collecting the sample information. Now we come to critical region or rejection region. A region in the sample space S which amounts to the rejection of H naught, where a region in the graph where we are rejecting the null hypothesis is known as rejection region, and the complementary region where we accept the null hypothesis, it is the acceptance region. For our one-tailed test alpha, this is a left-tailed diagram. Alpha is our level of significance, and this is the rejection region, and 1 minus alpha, that is our acceptance region. Here we do not reject our H naught. This is for two-tailed. This region where 1 minus alpha, that is our acceptance regions. Here we do not reject our H naught, but here that is alpha by 2. For calculating rejection region of two-tailed, we divide alpha by 2. So we get our two-tailed rejection region. Types of error is done. Is it clear types of error and level of significance? So as I was saying, critical region is basically our rejection region where we reject our null hypothesis, that is H naught. For a single-tailed hypothesis test, the rejection region is given as alpha, and for a two-tailed test, it is given by alpha by 2, the rejection region. Here we reject our null hypothesis, that is our null hypothesis is not accepted in this in the values, but in the and the region complementary to our rejection region is known as the acceptance region, which is denoted by 1 minus alpha. So if I have 5% rejection region, my level of significance, if alpha is given as 5%, my acceptance region will be given 1 minus 5, that is 95%. Is it clear, the critical region and accepted region?
Okay, Rashmi, you can.
Okay, now we come to test of significance. Test of significance is a device by means which we may either accept or reject our null hypothesis. It's a test where it's a process of test we perform to find out if we may either accept or reject our null hypothesis. A test of significance is basically a form or procedure for comparing observed data with a claim, that is a hypothesis. We perform a test on our null hypothesis, that is our claim, and we find out either our claim is true or if our claim is false. The claim statement is about a parameter like the population proportion P or population mean. like suppose if I'm making a null hypothesis that my population mean, as I said, is equal to some specified mean in the previous example here. When I said that population mean has a specified mean is equal to a specified mean, so I am basically making a claim on the population parameter, either on the population proportion or population mean. And then the results of significance tests are expressed in the terms of probability that measures how well the data or the claim agree. If it is more than, if our probability is greater than the significance level, then our test is accepted. That is, our null hypothesis is true. But if it is less, that means our null hypothesis will, we fail to reject our null hypothesis. So these are the steps we need to follow to perform test of significance. That is whether to accept our null hypothesis or reject the null hypothesis. The first, we state the null and alternative hypothesis. Then we calculate the test statistics, either using t-test or z-test. Then we find the p-value corresponding to the t-test and z-test. Then we compare our p-value with alpha, that is level of significance provided in the problem. And then we decide whether our null hypothesis is rejected or accepted. Before going to the test of significance, let's go through what is one-tailed and two-tailed test. A one-tailed test is a statistical test in which the critical area of distribution is one-sided, so that either it is greater or less than. If it is greater, then we have a right-tailed test, and if it is less than, if our hypothesis has the less than sign, then we will have the left-tailed test. One-tailed test is basically because there is only one direction. If it is our hypothesis is either greater or lesser, nothing other than that. Reason why it is called one-tailed. But whereas in two-tailed hypothesis, it is non-directional. I basically will give that my population parameter is not equal to a certain value. So I'm not giving you any direction. It either can be smaller or either it can be greater, but it won't be equal to. So it is split into both sides of the graph, left hand side as well as the right hand side. Reason why it is called the two-tailed test. We divide our level of significance when we are plotting in the two-tailed test. Here, comparison operator. If our null hypothesis, if our alternative hypothesis has not equal to sign, then we have a two-tailed test. Alpha by the level of significance is given by alpha by 2 and alpha by 2. When our alternative hypothesis is greater than sign, it is one-tailed and right-tailed. Our significance level will be 5% or whichever it is provided, 5 or 1 or 10. And the values are plotted in the right-hand side of the graph. And when we have an alternative hypothesis with a smaller sign, we will have left-tailed test, and the values will be plotted in the left-hand side of the graph. Example: suppose that there are two population brands of bulb. One manufactures a bulb with standard process, and the other manufacturer uses some new technique. Okay, so the first brand who uses the standard process, the mean bulb life of the first population brand is mu1, and for the second brand which uses some new technique, the mean life is mu2. Now, if you want to have the bulbs differ significantly, should be if we want to test, the test is missing here. Okay, if we want to test if the bulbs differ significantly, then our null hypothesis will be mu1 equals to mu2. That is, I'm stating here that the mean life of the bulb produced by standard process as well as this new technique is equal. They don't have any significant difference, and the alternative hypothesis will be completely different than what my null hypothesis is. That is, they are completely not equal. They differ significantly. Okay, thus giving us a two-tailed test. So when I'm giving not equal to, I will have a two-tailed test. However, if you want to test if the bulbs produced by new process have a higher average life than those produced by standard process, then our null hypothesis will be same. But our alternative hypothesis will be that mu1 is smaller than mu2. Since I'm saying that the bulbs produced by new process have higher average life, that is mu2 is greater than mu1, right? I'm saying that bulbs produced by new process have higher average life than those produced by standard process. So I'm basically saying that my mu2 is greater than my mu1. And in this third case, if I'm testing that the product of new process is inferior to that of standard process, so my null hypothesis will be same again, but my alternative hypothesis will be that mu1 is greater than mu2. I'm saying that my new process is inferior to the standard process, thus giving us a right-tailed test. Thus, the decision about applying two-tailed or one-tailed test will depend on the problem we understudy. Depending on the what the question is asked us to perform or to study, we will perform either a two-tailed test or a one-tailed test. Now we come to this test statistics. Test statistics is the number calculated from a statistical test of hypothesis. It shows how closely observed data matches the distribution expected under the null hypothesis of that statistical test. A test statistics is basically used to calculate the p-value of our results, helping to decide whether to reject our null hypothesis, whether to reject or accept our null hypothesis, whether to reject or null hypothesis. Yes, sorry, I forgot to add or accept. Then we have different types of test statistics. These things will be done more. These things will be done in more length, in the next sessions by Arun and Shirish. Now I'm just giving you a brief introduction because we'll be solving 2-3 examples related to this. So, but a further study of this statistics will be done by Arun maybe in the next session. These are the formula for Z test. Here X is the mean of sample and mu naught is the mean of population, and sigma is the standard deviation of the population, and small n is the number of observations. T-test has more than one formula which you will study further later. I've just given the formulas here and with the degrees of freedom. Now we come to a very important topic, that is the p-value. P-value is used in hypothesis testing to help you support or reject the null hypothesis. As I said, a p-value is very important to calculate if we need to find whether to support or reject the null hypothesis. P-value is mandatory to help us find out whether to accept or reject our null hypothesis. As I was saying, p-value is used in hypothesis testing to help us support or reject the null hypothesis. A p-value is the evidence against a null hypothesis. Whether we accept our null hypothesis or we reject our null hypothesis, it completely depends on the p-value. P-value gives us an idea of how strongly the data contradicts or supports the hypothesis. P-values always helps us to assess significance of any level, be it 5%, 1%, 10%. The smaller the value, the stronger the evidence that you should reject the null hypothesis. If it is greater, if our p-value is greater than the significance level, then we might accept our null hypothesis. But if it is smaller than the significant level of significance, we will reject our null hypothesis. P-value, how to calculate p-value? The steps to calculate p-value is, first we need to find the test statistics, that is T or Z test, which test to perform. Then we find the CDF of the distribution from the Z table or from the T table, depending on the test we are performing. For a left tail test, our p-value is the corresponding cumulative distribution function. And for our right tailed test, our p-value is 1 minus the CDF of x. CDF of x here is the cumulative distribution function of the T score or Z score, which we will calculate using T's test or Z test. So our p-value for left tail test is the value which we will get from the table itself. But for right tail test, we need to subtract it from 1. And for a two tail test, we need to first multiply it with 2 and then subtract it from 1. These are
Rashmi, it would be better if you just show it with a normal plot.
I'm sorry, Arun, what?
That the previous one tail, two tail thing, in that you can just tell graphically how to interpret it.
Okay. In the two tailed, as I said, my p-value will be 1 minus twice the CDF. That is, let me do it with an example itself, it will be better. Here, the question here is that a statistician wants to test the hypothesis that our null hypothesis is that H naught is equal mu equals to 120 using the alternative hypothesis that H alpha is mu is greater than 120. Assuming that level of significance is 0.05, for that he took the samples and sample size 40, sigma 32.17 and sample mean 105.37. Now we need to conclude an hypothesis for this. Determine the, yes, so we are using Z test here. The formula is given here. We simply put the score values for our sample mean, that is 105.37, and mu is given as 120. So we just simply put the values and find out the Z test, that is the Z score. Now using the Z score table, here we found out that our Z test is minus 2.87. So I go to the Z table and go to the negative table of Z score. First we need to find 2.8. So I find out 2.8 and it is 7. 2.8 for 7 is here 0.0212. Right? Then we find out that p-value for our Z score is 0.021. And since our alternative hypothesis is greater, has the greater sign, it is a left-tailed. It is a right-tailed test. So we calculated 1 minus 0.021, which we get as 0.9979. That is our p-value. Since our p-value is greater than 0.05, we fail to reject our null hypothesis. p-value is greater than the given level of significance. Reason why we accept our null hypothesis, which means our null hypothesis is true. Another definition of p-value I have not added, is just that it is in my mind, is that p-value are the extreme levels of the level of significance. They lie in the extreme level of the rejection region, which is somewhere here. Suppose my level of significance is here, that is minus 2.086. So my p-value will be somewhere here in this region, in the shaded region. P-values are mostly the extreme values of level of significance. So yes, that is it. Is it clear, the p-value?
Yeah, Rashmi, you can move to the next example.
Okay. So if this is just a table showing the hypothesis interpretations mostly used, p-value which is greater than 0.05, that is 5% level of significance, the result is not statistically significant, and hence we do not reject the null hypothesis. Since our p-value, as I said, if our p-value is greater than the level of significance, we do not reject our null hypothesis because the null hypothesis is true. But if our p-value is less than the level of significance, the result is statistically significant. Generally, we reject the null hypothesis, and our test result is in the favor of alternative hypothesis. P-value, again, which is less than 1% of level of significance, the result is highly statistically significant, and thus it is sure that we reject the null hypothesis, and it is also sure that we accept our null hypothesis. Next example is that is how do we conclude everything, like how do we find the p-value and how we conclude our hypothesis. So in the National Academy of Archery, the head coach intends to improve the performance of the archery ahead of an upcoming competition. What do you think is a good way to improve the performance of the archers? The coach proposed and implemented the idea that the breathing exercises and meditation before the competition could help. The statistics before and after the experiments are below. These are the statistics like mean and standard deviation and size, sample size, and the years is given before the experiment and after the experiment. So the results favor that the assumption that the overall score of archers improved, but the coach wants to make sure that these results are because of the improved ability of the archers, that the exercises which he implemented actually worked, not by any luck or chance. So how do you process this? How do we find this? So we are given population mean is 74 here, standard deviation is given as 8, sample mean is given as 78, sample size is given as 60. According to the problem above, there can be two possible outcomes, that is the null hypothesis and our alternative hypothesis. If our experiment results are a matter of luck, which means mean before and after the experiment should be similar, right? So our null hypothesis will be that population mean will be equals to sample mean. But our alternative hypothesis says that the after experiment results are indeed very different from the pre-experiment ones, because the exercises and the meditation implemented by the coach actually worked on the ability of the archers. So our alternative hypothesis will be population mean is not equal to the sample mean. Now we use z-test here. We put the values for sample mean, population mean, standard deviation, and the sample size, and we calculate the value for z-test, that is the z-score. After this, we go to the z-table again, and we find out the p-value for 3.88. If we look in the z-table for 3.88, it should be 3.88, we will get a value of which is approximately equal to 0.999. Here you can see 0.8, 3.8. 3.8. See, all the values here are basically 0.99995 or 994, but for 3.88 we have 0.9995. So I have taken just approximate value 0.99. Then for p value, as I said, it is right tailed because it has not equal to sign. For right tailed test, we had our p value as 1 minus 2 multiplied by the cumulative distribution function of the z-score. So we do that here, 1 minus 2 into 0.999 to find the p-value. So our p-value here is minus 0.998, which is very small than the considered alpha. Since here no level of significance is mentioned, by default we consider alpha to be 0.05. If in any question the level of significance is not mentioned, by default we consider the level of significance to be 0.05, that is 5%. So according to our understanding, if the likeliness of obtaining the sample, that is p value, result is less than the alpha value, because it is very less than the alpha value, we consider the sample result obtained as significantly different, which means that our alternative hypothesis is true and our null hypothesis is false. Therefore, we can conveniently say that the increase in performance of the arches is not the result of luck, but because of the exercises and meditation implemented by the coach. Okay, done. Was it clear, everything?
Yeah, clear, Rashmi, but sorry, one thing, she actually failed the presentation to me, but there is a small mistake here. I failed to note that earlier. So anyway, since it is for your understanding, I will just tell you so that Rashmi as well as other people can correct that. So let's see how she has something of p value. Okay. So basically, when we in the table, she got a value of 0.999. So actually, we are trying to see the area of the rejection region. It is actually 1 minus 0.999 only. Because when you interpret both sides, it will be same only. So then p value will be 1 minus 0.999, right? So it was 0.001. So which is less than.
So you're saying that this won't be multiplied by 2.
No,
P value.
the way we interpret the table, whatever if you multiply by 2, it will be 2 into 0.005. Because alpha by 2 we have to take, na.
Okay.
So it is actually 1 minus 0.099. So the answer will be p value will be 0.001. So it will be less than alpha. So the whatever remaining statements are true only. Only this p value will be like 2 into will not be applicable here, because that is because of the way there are different ways in which we can read the normal table. So that next class we will cover the different ways and different types of normal tables. So depending on that, the answer will be like not minus 0.98, it will be 0.001 in this case. So I hope
initially when I calculated, I got
it was correct.
The 001.
Yeah, so that only is correct here, 0.001. You can just correct the presentation. So when we upload, it will be the correct. Okay, any doubts in this? We will be seeing more examples in the next sessions.